occasion to temporarily come out of retirement and talk about the time when we worked on that wonderful building. When it was decided that the building needed to be reconstructed, the question came up, who was going to do that? And luckily, I had some years before that done a remodeling total remodeling of the Mercado, which was at that time a market. And so in doing that, I took pictures of the entire block and around the corner. So I had the whole facade all the way documented, which showed every brick in the old During building, all the stretches and headers and whatnot, and all the patterns. And in addition, I spent hours and probably days, and it was pretty cold, I remember that, measuring the arches that remained. There were about 4 arches left of the west facade. The rest was all gone. And what many of you don't know is that the building was, the original building that was constructed in 1890 was on the corner, and it encompassed about 3 arches as they are now, and the rest of it, extending to the building next door, was built in 1910. And at that time, the old brick pillars were removed and replaced with steel columns, which you still can see. However, at the time, shortly before the fire, the city had a mandated unreinforced masonry calendar where all these fragile buildings needed to be restored for seismic reasons. And when we found, after the fire, we found the remaining wall standing, this was actually a blessing. We could now, without any hindrance, reconstruct what was supposed to be seismically safe. And the existing wall was quickly braced after the fire, and then in the reconstruction, it was permanently braced with steel structures, and as was the support for the overhang over the sidewalk was also supported with new steel columns. However, the rest of the building, the rest of the brick facade, is but a veneer. Instead of 1 foot thick, it's just about 4 inches thick, and it's held by wood frame building behind it, which is the real structure. But every brick is as it was before the fire. One of the things that was interesting that I discovered when I looked at the bricks out in the yard as they were cleaned, there was one brick that had a strange shape, and I had no idea where it belonged because the old part that was remaining didn't have any of those. So I looked closer at the pictures, and I found that the older part of the building had that kind of brick on the lunette windows. These arched windows are called lunette windows, and they had these bricks. Every other brick was a pattern with a kind of a half round and the little projection. And you can see it now when you look closely at the building. You can also see the seam between the old and the new, or the remaining, the part that was remained after the fire, and the new part. There's a diagonal seam going kind of across, and the old part that was remaining and braced actually leaned a little bit after the fire, and it was just caught with wood beams and everything to keep it from coming down. And it's still leaning, but it's safely supported. So that was pretty much the construction effort. We based on the measurements I took, we made construction drawings, and in spring of 92, I believe, we had a roof raising party like we did in the old country. Like we put a little fir tree on top of the cupola, and the carpenters were provided with a little scarf and a little meal, which was a very pleasant occasion. And one thing to say about the cupola, as it was laying on the side in the road, everybody thought it could be saved and salvaged, but that was not the case. It was really a mess. But it served to take measurements and faithfully reconstruct the cupola. So it's all the measurements, everything is exactly accurate as it was. I have to close with saying that it was one of my most pleasant jobs I had, because I had such wonderful clients in both the Durings and the League, and also everybody who was involved, including the contractor and his extremely talented supervisor, name of Ken Gabriel, who made sure that everything was according to the architect's drawing, which isn't so common in these days. And when there was problems, we stuck our head together and solved it. And this is how it went. Thank you.